All right, welcome to another episode. Today we have Jordan Park. He's the co-founder of RevPilot, but at heart, he is a true operator. He's currently working on building sales systems for over 200 different organizations across the globe. So, Jordan, welcome to the show.
Luis, what's up, my friend? It's good to see you again, man.
Man,
It's been
it-
been too long.
I know, man. So tell us a little bit about, I'd love to get into your story and how you got here, but tell me a little bit more about RevPilot. What is it and kind of what are you working on there?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. So, RevPilot, at the most boring level, I guess, is a sales operations agency, right? We deploy sales systems in many different types of organizations. Um, but we have a lot of, I guess, principal level operating systems that we really focus on, and that's obviously through the years of experience, how we've kind of accumulated what makes the most sense for businesses to have more quality conversations at the end of the day. So super blessed to have the opportunity to work with so many different companies, so many different niches, and build quite unique sales processes for some of them.
Absolutely, man. And I know a little bit about your journey. So that's not what you've always done. You've not always been in sales or sales operations. Take us back, man, to coming out of school. Like, what was your thought process? Where did you think you were headed, and how did you end up like here where you're at? Beautiful location, obviously, but tell us a little bit more about the journey.
Wow, how far we want to go back to school,
Well,
huh?
so usually what happens is we go through transitions because that's what this podcast really focuses on is
Yeah.
leadership mentality. But what were some of the transitions, pivot points for you that caused you to say, you know what, like this sucks, but we gotta break through this.
Yeah, it's a great question, man. So you might be one of the first people to get this on video. So I think probably be a good episode. There's a lot of history of how I ended up where I am at today. Like most
Yeah.
people that um I don't share. I don't really share it ever. So yeah, I guess let's go back to, school. Boise, Idaho. I went to Boise high school, downtown Boise, and very kind of, liberal and very freedom seeking place in the world.
Mm,
So I got started using drugs at a pretty young age and got a girlfriend and realized that if I wanted to have a productive life and be the man that I needed to be for her, drugs probably weren't the right path. So when I turned 18, I was like, okay, I need to get a job. I need to get a job and I need to quit messing around. So
mm,
it's exactly what I did. I got a job at a call center, working for Apple tech support, basically. I had no vision for my future whatsoever. I hadn't even really considered what I wanted to be, which was interesting. I didn't do the SATs or plan on going to college like most people. So I started in a call center, man. And what a tough job. Shout out to anyone that works in a call center or anyone that has. I did that for quite some time and quickly realized that that was not what I wanted to do with
mm,
my life. So I made a transition. I was super blessed to have a manager at the time who listened to me during my one-on-ones, and he heard me say one time that I had welded a lot in high school, and I was very good at
mm,
welding. And he had a buddy who was the foreman of a welding shop in Boise, Idaho. So he actually set up a meeting for that. And that was one of the big pivotal moments in my life where I kind of had to take a jump. I went and met this guy, and he was like, "Okay, great. When can you start?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I just got to put in my 2 weeks." He's like, "No, we need someone today."
Oh,
I was like, "Oh, okay." So he said that the job is from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And if you've ever worked in a call center, Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30 isn't really the schedule of a call center, right? Typically you're
yeah.
working weekends, you're starting at 10:30, maybe getting off at 8 p.m., maybe later, it depends. So I drove from my lunch break straight back to the office that I worked in, and I went to the director of the floor. I said, "Hey, man, kind of in a pickle here. I need you to give me a schedule Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30, because I'm going to go work another job from 4 to 8 p.m. and I want to do them both." And luckily, I had a little bit of leverage. I had upskilled so many times, like in that company, that they couldn't really like
Mm,
afford to retrain someone at that moment. So he granted me the schedule, which was awesome. And then I spent the next 8 months basically waking up at 5, going to job one, working until
Dang, man.
7 to 3:30, hopping in my car, driving straight across town, getting to the welding shop, working from 4 to 8 p.m. with the hopes that the welding job would eventually go full time.
Hmm.
And after doing this for 8 months, literally, with no guarantee that I would even get a job at this welding shop, they wrapped up the project, fired everyone else, and then offered me the job, which was really cool. And this was something that
That's massive,
would
dude.
actually become kind of a thing that happened quite often in my
Yeah.
life. And, I kind of had to unpack maybe why that was happening. So, funniest part is, super excited. I'm like 21 years old. I'm a welder. I'm going to be a welder. Quit my job, go
As
show up at
well,
this new
man.
job, get to the welding shop, and the guy hands me a bucket of one piece. They were like 1 inch wide by 4 inch long pieces of metal. And I go, oh, well, am I supposed to weld these? He goes, oh no, son, you're not a welder. You're going to be cutting parts for the company. I'm
Oh,
like, what do you
man.
mean cutting parts? He said, well, that's that thing over there. You're going to press the button and it's going to cut this in half, and then you're going to go deliver them to the welders.
Dang.
So I thought I was coming in to be a welder. Turns
Right.
out I was a shop hand, right? So that was a little humbling, right? And I was like,
Dang.
okay, well, I'm just going to do a really, really good job at this, and then I'll become a welder quickly. So I get my first bucket done. It takes me about a day. It was like 1,000 of these things. Uh, and then he turns to me and says, okay, great. Can you do 10,000 more? And 10,000 of these, like 30 days of work, right?
Uh,
So I'm like, man, okay. So I go cut through all of these as fast as I can. I'm like, this is the thing, deliver all 10,000. And he goes, okay, perfect. Can you do 10,000 more? So this goes on for about 2 years, right? I had to work my way up in the shop. I don't know why I expected to just come in and take a
right.
welding position at this company. So over the course of 2 years, I worked my way up to kind of the top position in the shop. I ended up being a welder, the youngest welder in the company history, and had a ton of fun doing it. But then I realized once again, I guess, and this is a trend throughout my life, that
Yeah.
this isn't really what I want to do. If anyone's welded before, it's dirty work. It's hot. It's exhausting. It's not very health conscious, right? You're breathing in fumes and chemicals all day.
Mm.
So I decided to make another pivot. And at this point, I thought the best thing to do would be go back to college and get a degree in mechanical engineering. So uh, I kept working my job, and then I would go on online tutoring courses, basically free online tutoring courses, and relearned all my math, relearned all my English so I could do the placement test for college because I hadn't even taken a college placement test before. Um, Took the test, did really well, got into college. Uh, and then I did part-time college and work. So I was working in the welding shop, and then, from again 4 p.m. until 8, 10 p.m. at night, I would be doing my college courses. Um, and I was doing really, really well. So after about a year of doing that, I decided to quit my welding job and go full time to school so I could finish this
Mm.
up more quickly. And that was another pivotal moment, kind of big risk, a lot of uncertainty. And, everyone around me told me, especially in the welding shop,
Yeah.
like, dude, you're
Yeah.
an idiot, you're making a ton of money. Um, but I knew it wasn't the path for me.
And
So
and real
quit.
quick on that note, because I think that might be useful for individuals who are in a position where they're like, this is making sense on paper, but it just doesn't align or fulfill me. What was it specifically that caused you to say this isn't for me?
Yeah. So I don't know if at the time I really maybe had a plan. It was more of a
Mm,
feeling, I
yeah,
think,
yeah, yeah.
of, this of lack of growth, I guess. I
Oh, I
crave
see.
growth in my life. And, at the, if you look at the call center, I had kind of reached the
Mm,
pivot, the top of the call center other than going into management. And then I left. And in the welding shop, I worked my way all the way up to a point where, I kind of saw, okay, well, the next thing is just to keep doing this for 20
yeah.
years. So, I kind of wanted another challenge. I wanted more growth,
Okay,
if you will.
I see.
And that's something I've really had a quite deep conversations with a lot of people of, some people seem to have a feeling in them that they're always meant for more and they should be doing
Mm,
more. And some people maybe don't have that to such a strong degree. And it's quite an interesting concept to kind of talk about of,
yeah.
why some people are so driven to be more and other people aren't. Um,
But where do you
and I
think it
think
comes
if
from for
you,
you? Is it like your parents? Is it just like wanting
Mhm.
to be better or like,
Growing up, we had just enough, um, but we didn't have a lot. And there was a decent amount of struggle. So I think a little bit of that plays into it. I think
mm,
more than anything, I'm a genuinely curious person. Uh, and I just have always loved learning new things and doing new things. Um, I also have ADHD, so I have every hobby under the sun, surfing,
right.
motocross, skateboarding, like whatever you can think of, I've probably tried it or done it. And that's been, kind of a constant throughout my entire life. And I get really, really into something for 3 years or
Yeah.
so, and I kind of move on. So.
Okay, awesome. So then you decided, let's keep going, let's keep growing. They were telling you don't do it, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I made the jump. I got two part-time jobs and I went to college full time, and kind of worked my way through that. And I had a ton of fun, honestly. It was really cool again because I was learning, I was growing. Um, but I was hanging out with the wrong people at this time, and
Oh,
I went through a breakup. And at the time, I had what I would consider little to no emotional intelligence, emotional control, and I really let that eat me up. And there was a lot kind of more there that happened in that situation, and that ultimately led me to using drugs again. And
yeah.
I started using drugs again, and it was the first time in my life where I couldn't pay rent
Oh wow, yeah.
and I didn't know what to do. So,
Yeah.
long story short, I decided to try to be Pablo Escobar for a short period of time. And
Mm.
very quickly, within months, I lost everything. I
Oh
lost
wow.
my house. I had two cars. I had a drift car at the time that I was building. I lost everything, my dog, my house, my cars, all my
Wow.
money. I went into major debt and ended up an addict that lived in a hotel for, months while I was kind of going through this phase,
Mm.
um, which was, very tough situation to
Yeah.
go through if anyone's dealt with, drug abuse, especially to that level. It completely wipes out everything that is good in your life. And
Mm.
so and this is a lot of people don't know this about me. So I had to make a choice again.
Yeah.
The entire time I was going through this, though, I knew I was going to find a way out. I don't know why. And you asked that
Wow.
question a little bit ago, what is it? And I didn't know, but I knew with such a high level of certainty that I'm not meant for this, and like I will find a way out of this. I didn't know what that
Wow.
solution was at the time.
Mm.
So I was lucky enough to have a family member that lived in Arizona, and she texted me and said, "Hey, would you consider coming down to live with us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, I'll come down tomorrow." She's like, "Really? Like, then do it." So I literally booked a plane ticket that night, packed one suitcase, and flew to Arizona overnight. Uh,
Wow.
Landed. Uh, it's my cousin. She's the most amazing person on the
Mm.
planet. They had three kids at the time, with one on the way. Her husband was a cop. Or is
Okay.
the cop. And now I'm like just living in the spare bedroom of this house, right? So I go from this crazy fast
Yeah.
life of drugs and money and all this other stuff after blowing up my entire life, uh, to broke, jobless, uh, addicted, right? So first 2 weeks, I pretty much just slept. Like I
Mm.
don't even hardly remember that phase.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I remember like waking up one day, I'm like, okay, I got to get a job, right? Like back to work, got to get a job. So I got a job at LA Fitness, working the front desk, and that lasted about a week and a half. because I was like, this is just the worst thing
Oh
ever.
wow.
So that lasted about a week and a half, but I was able to lock up a job, funny enough, with the same company that I started at when I was 18. So the call center. So
Yeah.
full circle, 4 years later, I made all this progress just to end up
Mm.
right back at the same place doing the same job that I was doing when I was 18 years old, um,
Mm.
which was very, very tough to deal with. After about a year of that, I ended up getting a job at USAA Insurance Company, which is a great, great company. And again, I was on this upwards trajectory of figuring out my life.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was working hard. I really started at this point truly reading books. I mean, I was reading a couple hours a day probably at this point, working out every day, really getting back in shape, working really hard. And about 2 years into that, I hit another wall, which again, these are kind of commonalities throughout
Yeah.
my entire life, which was I noticed I started drinking a little more and I was
Okay.
unhappy. Um, and this moment is what really kind of shifted my entire life and actually how I met you, Luis, how we ended
Mm.
up connecting. So I was working at USAA, I was miserable. And I pretty much locked myself in my bedroom, sat myself down. I was like, I got to figure this out. Like, I'm either going to go back to all the stuff I've been running away from, or I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
So I pretty much ignored everyone for an entire week and got quiet and spent time journaling and started asking myself questions,
Mm-hmm.
which was, why do I hate my job so much? And the first thing that came to my mind was money. Well, I don't make enough money.
Mm.
But then I had to unpack that a little further and go, okay, well, if I made all the money in the world, would I still hate my job? Yes. Okay, well, why do I hate my job then? And it came down to one very specific thing, which was I was surrounded by people that didn't inspire me. Um,
Wow.
the people around me didn't have goals, they didn't have dreams, they've kind of given up on life. And
Mm.
I didn't want to be in that position. I'd never been that person. I didn't want to be that person. I'm
Mm.
overcoming this huge challenge. And now I feel like I'm getting sucked back into this little,
Yeah.
vacuum. So when I realized that, I said, okay, perfect. What is the opposite of unmotivated, undisciplined people? And the first thing that popped into my head was a really weird thought. It was motivational speakers. I was like, okay, that's a weird thought. Like, how do you get a job with a motivational speaker? And I just so happened to have a friend in Arizona who I worked out with. He was younger. My good friend Maddie, one of my best friends in the world now. And I sent him a text. I was like, hey, don't you work for a guy that wrote a book? That's all I knew at the time.
Right.
And he goes, yeah, it's crazy that you texted me. I just got out of a meeting. We're hiring 40 salespeople.
No way, dude.
So definitely unit God moment, right? I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. Like I'm looking for a new sales job. Do you think you could give him my application? Still at this point, I really didn't know anything about
Mm.
who this person was. Well, it turned out to be Dean Graziosi.
Yeah.
Um, and I submitted my resume, got an interview, and got a job as a sales rep, which was really, really cool. So now I'm out of this, but there was a lot of, again, uncertainty. And that's where I think
Mm-hmm.
those risks, you got to take those risks in
Yeah.
life. And if you can't make those decisions on your own and take those risks, like you have to find out what the path is to that,
Mm-hmm.
and how you do that. But I had a car that barely ran. I had no money. I was giving up my health insurance and all my benefits to go work at this company.
Right.
I lived in North Phoenix, which was 55 minutes away at best from the office with like a car that I
Mm.
didn't even know was going to make it there. Um,
Right.
but I said, screw it. We're going to do it. Like this feels right. So we did it. So I got the job there. Everything was really good for 2 months. And as I'm working there, this little thing called COVID
Oh,
decides to
yes.
pop up.
Right.
The first case of COVID kind of happened December of 2019, I guess. And everything shut down. I think it was February, January
Yeah.
of that year. Well, the problem was we sold in-person events.
Right.
So Thankfully, their company, Mastermind.com, made a fantastic pivot at that point
Yeah,
to digital events,
huge,
and that turned into, one of the
massive.
they've had the biggest challenges, the biggest events online pretty much
Yeah.
ever. So luckily they made that pivot, but there's a ton of uncertainty. I was not the best closer on the team, and all I knew up until this point was just I can outwork people. I
Mm-hmm.
can do two times as much as everyone else. Like I might not be the best, but I definitely can outwork you. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my theme, over the last 10 years of my life leading up to this moment. And so I'd make 300 dials a day. I'd do all my follow-ups. I'd be working on
Yeah.
Christmas and New Year's Eve and everything I could do just to stay in the game. Um, which I don't recommend to everyone.
Yeah.
It's not a sustainable way to live if you're always just trying to work harder than everyone else instead of more effectively. But essentially, what happened is they shrunk the team, so they fired half the team. They kept me, thank God. And then they fired half the team again. So there's 10 people left out of the 40. They kept me again. They fired the other half of the team. There's 5 people left. And then they got rid of those people and they brought me and like two other people uh,
Mm.
into the organization in a different format, which was really, really cool. And at that time, I was given an opportunity to be a project manager, which was
Right.
funny because when I worked at USAA, I actually took some courses on project management.
Um,
But I had no business being a project manager. It was one of those kind of gifts from God. They knew I had work ethic, and they were willing to take a bet on me. So shout out to Jeremy Gabbert.
yeah.
Uh, he kind of took me under his wing at that point, and gave me work, and then would disappear for weeks at a time, basically.
Mm.
Which was again another moment where I had the choice to like figure it out and work, or kind of waste the opportunity. And I knew in that moment that this was the biggest opportunity I've ever been given in my entire life, and I could actually build something lifelong
Mm-hmm.
off of this. And that's exactly what I did. So I went into project management, started managing CRMs. That was like my first real time going super super deep in CRM and sales process and all of that. And it just scaled from there. I ended up running, the affiliate marketing program for mastermind.com with Jeremy Gabbert and having some
Yeah.
huge, $20 million, $40 million launches. Um, running the sales systems behind mastermind.com. And then I just expanded those responsibilities over time. So eventually kind of moving into, the director of operations, if you will, of mastermind.com, kind of
Yeah.
overseeing fulfillment, coaching, sales. And that's where I met you, obviously. Um, so yeah, it was quite the journey, of
Yeah.
just like ups and downs, and what I've learned, and I always have to reflect back on is two things, which is it says it a lot in the Bible, right? Everything is a
Mm.
season. You have a season for reaping, a season for growing, a season for planting, and
Mm-hmm.
that's been true throughout my entire life. And a lot of it has been self-inflicted, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we're our own worst enemy. I
Yeah.
am very good at imploding my own life,
Mm.
but I'm just as good at finding a way back, and out of the mess that I may have created for myself. Um, so yeah, and then I left mastermind.com after a long career there, doing some really, really cool stuff. Went into some fractional sales leadership, which was fantastic, ran Dan Bilzerian's, Pace Morby's teams,
Mm.
and a bunch of other, pretty big people in the coaching space. And then pivoted and went back into kind of a rev ops role.
Mm.
And then we started RevPilot, about 3, 4 years ago. And RevPilot's mission has been super, super simple: build the simplest, best scalable sales systems that we possibly can, and do it at a really, really high level. We've had a ton of success with that. We've built a ton of cool sales systems. I've learned a ton along the way. Um, but it was, yeah, quite a
Yeah.
quite a rocky road.
Yeah, I hear that, man. So, and maybe it continues, how has faith played a role through that? Maybe now you have way
Yeah.
more of it. Before you didn't even really lean on it, but what was that like during all those ups and downs?
Yeah, it's a great question. You said faith, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would consider myself a Christian, and um I was raised Christian.
Yeah.
My actions obviously did not on the outside display that of what typically people would consider a Christian man. But I always had a relationship with God, I guess, to some
Mm.
point. Um, and one of my favorite quotes is never go back to something you had to pray your way out of.
Oh, wow.
And that one always hits home because there was many, many times where I was so broken down, I was so lost. I had no clue what the solution was. But I did always pray.
Mm.
And back then I wasn't uh very godly person, if that makes sense. And from the outside, you may not have been able to tell, but it is interesting when I look back, pretty much my whole life. I've always come back to prayer, and
Okay.
every time something gets hard, I've always prayed my way through it. And I guess that is a big thing
Wow.
that we can't discount, right?
Yeah.
Is that whenever I really pray on something, things move.
Wow.
And whatever you want to call that, whoever, whatever you believe
Yeah.
in. Um, for me personally, I've watched things move out of the way in such obvious ways that I couldn't sit here anymore and say that it's not real, that it doesn't exist, because it is so obvious, and there's
Yeah.
such a pattern throughout my life.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So for you, as you look at the journey, what do you feel the identity was, and maybe has that identity evolved over time?
Um, I'm still unpacking that, funny enough, and I want to be as transparent as possible, obviously. I'm still unpacking that. And something that might help just for authenticity here is, I love to drink. I love to drink. I love to have some beers with friends, right?
Yeah.
And it's something I'm actually working through right now because, the
Okay.
Bible's very clear on its stance of drunkenness and, sober-mindedness.
Right.
And, my thing was always, well, drinking's fun and it doesn't have a negative impact. I can
Mm,
go drink and go to bed early and wake up the next day at 5 a.m.
right.
and continue my routine. And I don't get hangovers or,
Right.
fat. Like, I don't get angry. I don't
Yeah.
black out. Like none of these negative things happen. So it's very easy for me to just say, well, it's not
Justify
that
it.
bad and it's
Yeah.
enjoyable. What I've realized and I've been trying to kind of unpack is the identity between um letting people down, letting my family down, letting my partner down, letting
Mm,
God down, and how that creates some level of shame and guilt
yeah.
behind the scenes. So even though in my own head I'm able to go, oh yeah, well, it's okay. um
Mm,
there's been an internal battle of
yeah.
of what is right and wrong. And I have pretty clear definition on like what is right.
Hmm.
But then we have those pleasure seeking activities and habits of the flesh, if you will. And what I've realized very recently was, um, I have somewhat of an unhealthy relationship with trying to prove myself. And,
Hmm.
I think that's come back to obviously like I had some major
Yeah.
losses, major failures in my
Yeah.
life, where everyone counted me out.
Right.
Um, and I was able to make it back from those. But I've really been exploring over the last few years what parts of me are still running away
I
from
see.
that, and trying to prove myself, versus what parts of me are really living in a full embodiment of like love and letting go and freedom versus being kind of chained to these things that I feel like I
Mm.
need to prove myself and be better every day, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because let's be honest, like a lot of that actually gave us the results that we have. I mean, likewise, right? It's a lot of the underdog stories that we hear, right? So Eventually, to your point, I think it's maybe consolidating. Okay, well, do I want to keep cycling, right? It's like, yeah, ups and downs, but it's like, man, at what point does it make
Yeah.
sense to pivot? So, just to maybe unpack that further, what are some of the new beliefs that
Mhm.
you're trying to incorporate or live into that maybe have been difficult for you? And maybe we can tie in the idea of ego, the idea of love, the idea of like giving beyond ourselves. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's such a good topic because it is very relevant right now. And I mentioned earlier, I'm very, very good at pushing through. I'm good
Yeah,
at
yeah,
willpowering my way through
exactly.
life.
Right.
Um, as I transition into a CEO and a business owner, you quickly learn that that is not an effective method for anything to do with running a business. I mean, obviously, you have those oh shit emergency moments
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, I'm going to do what I do best and just like go after it. Um, but to really scale a business, to grow a business, to have something that's enjoyable,
Mm-hmm.
which is why most of us start or run
Right.
any business, is freedom and the ability to, actually enjoy what we do. Um, you can't willpower your way through that. You have to have a different strategy. Really a combination of hard work and willpower and effectiveness. Um, and the reason I kind of bring this up, I guess, is something I've really been contemplating a lot. I don't know what the answer is, which is
Yeah.
um, we could all die tomorrow. We could all die tomorrow. So there's one frame of if I work really, really hard right now, I can build a future for
I see.
myself that is desirable. Now, on the other hand, if we look at all the people who are on their deathbeds, right, most of them, their biggest regret is not spending more time with family.
Yeah.
It's working too hard, right?
Right.
Not spending more time in nature, enjoying themselves, etc.
Yeah.
So the question is, it's a chicken and the egg kind of situation that we run into. Do we work really, really hard and build this future? And then the question is, for what? And then
Mm-hmm.
the other question is, well, what if we die tomorrow? And it's all worth
Mm-hmm.
it, you know? And I've been trying to find where the middle of that is. And it's helped me a lot. Um, I think it really begins with understanding that, you have self-worth regardless, right? That humans crave love and
Mm-hmm.
that you have to love yourself. And as cheesy as that sounds, it
Yeah.
it is, if you feel like you're a failure in the eyes of
Of
other
course.
people or that you're trying to prove something, right? That's not love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm reading a really good book right now about this with your relationship with God, right? And a lot of
Oh.
people's relationship with God is very fearful and
Mm-hmm.
very judgmental. And the entire preface of the book is sharing scripture that really changes that to God. God loves you no matter what.
Right.
Um, and what you do outside of that, uh, it does not affect the amount of love that that person has for you. And if we look at a father and a son relationship, typically, right, and the prodigal son is one of the examples
Mm-hmm.
in the book from the Bible. That story is not so much about the son coming back. It is
Mm-hmm.
more so that when the son came back, the love of the father for the son did not change
Mm. Yes.
even though he
Absolutely.
had deeds, even though he did things, even though he squandered his money and was a failure, it was
Yeah.
him coming back that the father loved, right? So for me, it's been really identifying, that part of love and understanding like no matter what I do, still good enough.
Mm.
Um, and then finding the balance. Obviously, I have this amazing view in my backyard, right? Um, I'm living in the hills in Nicaragua. I got maybe 5 houses within 20 kilometers of myself. I get to wake up, I get to go surf every day. Um, really living on my own terms in a beautiful place. I'm so blessed to have this opportunity, but I still realize, even with an ocean in my backyard, um, sometimes I don't slow down. I don't even have time to take in the beauty of what is right in front of me.
Wow. Yeah. Mm.
So, I think most business owners can align with that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
That's been something I've kind of been working on unpacking and trying to figure
Mm.
out what is the right amount of balance of building for the future, enjoying the
Yes.
moment. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Because also a lot of times, if we really look at it, it's kind of like we're chasing, right? We're chasing like the win, the sales, the growth, the
yes,
revenue. But also we can easily find ourselves chasing the sunset, the next hit of dopamine from something that's great, like surfing or networking or going out for a drink. But from my experience, that's one thing that I've been working on recently too, is like how do we stop chasing? And for you, what would be the opposite of that? What would be your advice, right? If you were
yeah.
gonna give it to your younger self to not chase, to do what instead?
I, I don't know if I could confidently answer that because I think I'm still trying to, figure out what that is. I think the goal for me right now when it comes to that is creating environments
Okay.
where we're not swimming upstream. And when
Mm,
we do find ourselves swimming against the current, being much more self-aware of that moment and being able to kind of unpack, you know, what that is. We all see the stories of someone that chased money for so long
yeah,
and then they got all the money in the world and they're more miserable than ever, you
yeah.
know. Um, and like I said, sometimes I wonder, is all the hard work worth having this in my backyard?
Mm,
Because a lot of people it would be. I mean, we have the most incredible sunset
yeah,
right
man.
back here.
I
It's
see I
it,
see your, yeah,
it's unbelievable. It feels like I'm living in a fairy tale at
literally,
times.
yeah.
Um, but the work doesn't always, again, correlate to like this thing because I think what you said that you're chasing something. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
really, at the end of the day, I think it goes back to self-worth and like love. Um, those are
mm,
really the things I think all humans are craving at any given time, is the feeling of worth and love. Um, and money does not give that to you. Cool adventures and unique experiences does not give that to you. Um, so the question is, what does that give that to you? And I think for me, the answer is a closer relationship with God.
yeah,
Um, and a closer relationship with family. Um, as I get older and older.
yeah.
Everything else outside of that um, only gives you a temporary
Mm-hmm,
fix to
mm-hmm,
those things.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and another piece too is this idea of acceptance.
Yeah,
Just like seeing what we have in front of us and accepting, hey, you know what? It's not where I would love it to be yet. But also look at the stuff around us, right? It's like, or the family, or the people, or the memories, or the milestones that we've checked off, right? So
yeah.
from your perspective, like how important is gratitude, is making space throughout your day to kind of fill your cup back up and remember, like remember, Lion King, remember who you are, right? It's like to have
Yeah.
a chance to be like, oh, that's right, I'm actually pretty good.
I would say it's everything. Um, it it's one of the easiest ways to create perspective, you know. One of the things I really do like about, Nicaragua,
Mm,
as terrible as it is, around me there's a lot of dysfunction, if you will, poverty,
mm-hmm,
hunger, um, and that creates a lot of perspective. But again, if you don't create space, is the word you
mm-hmm.
used, if you don't create space for that, you won't even notice. You
Yeah,
will
we're
just
in a
go
bubble.
on with your
Yeah,
day
yeah,
and you will have no idea. So I would say it's of utmost space and time to think, especially as we have tools like ChatGPT and we're
oh
just
yeah,
like on social media all day, creating time. regardless if that's with you spending time with God, if that's you spending
Mm-hmm.
time with self. Um, we have to create space. And a good habit, aside from the just first creating space, I think that's like the first step.
Yeah.
Got to create space. Once the space is there, what you do with that space is also very important. Are we using it for gratitude? And something as simple, something I've done over the last 2 years, I read a book, Letting Go, that changed my life. It's such a good book,
Mm.
by David R. Hawkins, I believe.
Okay,
And
right. Yeah.
one of the things I realized is like just sitting there and watching the leaves on the trees below,
Dang. Right.
right? And when you start to do that and create space, you start to notice all the little sounds
That's so
around
good.
you, the way the wind is blowing the leaves, and you start to realize that we're in such a magnificent
Yeah.
world with
Mm.
so much happening, and we're so small, um,
Mm.
that these problems can seem to melt away
Yeah.
quite quickly, when we allow ourselves the space and time to kind of realign. So yeah, I would say it's everything, but it starts with creating space, and then what you do in that space is also important.
Yeah, and I don't, what's the word here? I don't recommend the following, but it's really helped me is in the past, we'll use that term, right, which is very vague. Whenever I've experienced psychedelics, that's actually what happened is that it feels like I'm just slowing down and then everything just is so vibrant and it pops up. So the reason I bring that up is almost like how do we duplicate that on a week to week, month to month basis, right? Where of course it's
Great
not
question.
having a shroom trip, it's more like
Yeah.
how do we, maybe have a mini retreat for ourselves or community or like
Yeah.
what would your experience kind of suggest there?
It's a great question. I'm still trying to solve that because, for me, one thing is like, drinking. When I have a couple beers, man, my brain, my ADD turns off,
Oh, I
right?
see.
I feel like I have permission to let go.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have permission to not be this high performing,
Right.
person. Um, so I would say it's twofold. One is creating healthy space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of that is literally just sitting. A lot of people meditate. I don't even think you need to meditate. Um, I think the voice in your head changes the longer you sit there. And you start to dissect your own thoughts a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make sense of what you're actually even thinking. And we don't allow ourselves space or time to even do that. Um, so I would say you have to find things where you're able to do just what you said, slow down.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, the problem is for example, I think surfing is slowing down. But you know what happens when I go surfing? Dude, I want to be better. I want to be a better surfer. So I'm paddling into every
Uh,
wave. I'm trying my hardest. I'm thinking about the mechanisms of surfing and how I can do this and how I can. It's not that relaxing,
I see, I see, I see.
right? So
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So I think sometimes we think, motocross was another one. Oh man, motocross takes my mind off. It takes my mind off of things. It does. Because if you're riding a
Yeah,
motorcycle
dude.
at high speeds, you have to focus. So it kind of narrows your vision.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's the goal a lot of times. That's just turning it off for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
just like drinking, just like mushrooms, right? All you're doing is you're narrowing your kind
Mm-hmm.
of focus, and getting rid of the noise. I think we need to spend more time in quiet, opening it up and allowing our brain to choose what to listen
Mm-hmm.
to, you know? Um, so I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
but that's kind of been a goal of mine recently.
Yeah, and I think the best part about this whole conversation is the authenticity, man. Like we don't have answers, or we do have some answers, but they're not fully completed yet, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Because we're on the path, we're on the journey. We're also not just blind to all these things that we know. It's like, hey, you know what? I could work on this or that. So as we kind of wrap up here and maybe start to look ahead, one of the big shifts for a lot of individuals, and maybe throughout your life you've experienced something of this nature, where when we really have a big why, that can actually be that source of gravity to pull us back to like perspective or a sense of gratitude. So if you don't mind sharing, like at this point in your life, what is that big why?
For transparency's sake, I don't know. I've been
Mm,
going through I've had different whys at different points in
yeah,
my life.
yeah,
And I think that's something a lot of people have to realize is like, again, there's seasons for
yeah.
everything. And at one point in my life, the why was, well, I have to prove to everyone that,
Okay,
I can do this.
exactly.
I'm not a terrible person, or, and that got me through, like you said, unhealthily, probably at some point. A lot of challenges. It helped me push through. And about 2.5 years ago, I really got into kind of letting go and realizing that none of this matters. And the harder I hold on to stuff,
Mm,
um, the less effective I am at everything. And it's more stressful,
yeah.
And then I kind of shifted back the other way, which was interesting to, I got to build this future. I got to build this business.
Okay.
I got employees that work for me. I got to take care of everyone, and my feeling of letting go, that relaxed feeling, started to dissipate again. So I would say I'm kind of in a position of refining my why, especially because
Mm-hmm.
I learned more and more things. Traveling the world and living in places like this was a huge part of my why
Yeah,
before, freedom and the ability to, but I'm doing it all now, right? And again, to your point of chasing things, now I'm here, and I'm very easily going to the next thing, going, oh, well, what's next? Well, a
exactly.
bigger house out here, right? Or,
Yeah.
so I would say my big why right now
Mm,
always relates back to being a good, charitable friend, partner, leader to the people around me, and living a life of example and possibility, I would say.
mm-hmm.
Um, so even though I don't have it all figured out,
Yeah.
a lot of people can look up to me. A lot of people
Oh
do
yeah.
look up to me in my life of like, wow, Jordan. And what's funny actually is I got this from my brother, because my brother's way more talented than I am in most things in my life. So is my cousin. And they both recently, within the last year, I always thought they were more talented, but I never really shared that with them, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they really saw the hard weird work I was putting in behind the scenes just to keep
Yeah,
my afloat.
exactly.
So it was kind of funny because they look at me and go, wow, he's so talented. He's so good at what he does. And especially with social media, we do this. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
When
Yeah,
when in reality, there's a lot of work that goes into that. Very few people are just naturally talented at things. And even if they are, that's usually not what they're doing with their life.
yeah.
So yeah, I think just truly being a better version of myself every day, getting more clear on, what the real why is, and just being someone that people can look up to through good
Mm,
and bad, through authenticity, I think is a big, big why. Um, and also giving back is something that I've dedicated a lot of my last 2 years to,
yeah.
um, which is extremely fulfilling.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And if I can make an observation, just from like the pattern here, the big why I can guess is growth, right? You're really looking to continue to grow. But it feels like a bike with one of the wheels there, but the other one's missing, which could be maybe, I don't know, right? And that's like maybe the whole point of this is it's okay for us to not yet know the other wheel that's going to allow us to move forward. It could be contribution, it could be more of that, it could be more love, self-love or love for your environment or
Right.
whatever. Whatever the case may be. But as we start to wrap up here, one of my favorite questions is, to your point, let's say today was the last day on Earth, a meteor hit or whatever, what would you want that message to be for people to really know about either you or what you believe in? What's that message you want to share with the world?
That's a really good question. I would say that we have to realize that no one has any idea what they're doing in life, right? We are all guessing at what the right thing is to do in the right moment through a very narrow perspective. And it's quite difficult to put on someone else's glasses and see through the lens that they are. So I would
Mm,
say that uh, no matter where you're at, you always have the opportunity to change that path. And I think my life is a great
yeah.
example of that. Um, but it does take a decision and it takes risk. You have to have those two things, and you have to be willing to, as Tony Robbins would say, burn the boats. It really is. You do have to take that risk. Um, and then the second one is to always be merciful and have a lot of grace for people, for yourself and for others, right?
Mm,
Um, I just think about so many, especially when you live in a city, it's so easy to someone cuts you off in traffic, right? Um, Again, going back to the lens, we have no clue what is happening in that person's life,
that's
what
true.
their story is, where they're at on their journey. And I think the world really needs more mercy, more grace for everything that happens,
Mm,
which ultimately is love at the end of the day. So
mm,
I'd be kind of the two things, like wherever you're at, you can always make a change. You can always change the direction of your life. And the second would be that we got to give people a little more of a break.
that's fantastic, man. And just kind of final point there. I'm reading this book. I'm rereading it. Actually, it's called The Course in Miracles Made Easy by Alan Cohen, and he shares a powerful story where, long story short, somebody breaks into this guy's house, and the guy has this like extraordinary reaction because he goes, "Hey, man, like, is everything okay with you?" Right? It's like, what the fuck? Like, this guy just broke
My
into your
help.
house.
Yeah.
But it's the point of like grace. It's the point of like they're going through something. Like, what if we can help them out? Right? Obviously, that's an extreme example. I don't even know if it's fiction, fiction or not. But the whole point is like perspective, grace, and also how can that serve as a mirror for
Yeah.
us to be like, you know what? It's okay. I don't freaking know yet, but I know that I can eventually, find my way.
Yeah. I would say I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes. It's by the Pope Saint Francis of Assisi, and he says, "Speak the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words." And it's one of my favorite quotes, regardless if you're religious or not, because
Mm,
it's basically saying live by example, right?
mm,
We can't force anyone to do anything. If you have someone that's dealing with depression, the worst thing you can do is sit there and tell them that they need to change their life, that they need to get out of their
right.
bedroom, right? So all we can do is live by example, live a healthy life, live the thing that you want them to become. And if you
Mm,
do that, people are going to be much more likely to ask for advice or be silently inspired by you behind the
yeah.
scenes, and you may not even know it.
Absolutely. But well, anything else, Jordan? This was amazing, but anything else?
That's it, man. Thank you for
Wonderful.
having me on the
Well,
show.
thank you. And
Um, and yeah, it's good to see you again, man. We'll have to catch up after this and uh, see how things are going.
of course, well, thank you to the listeners, and we'll see you soon.